Good morning. You have joined the U.S. Chemical Safety and Hazard Investigation Board's, or CSB's, business meeting. We will now begin this meeting with Dr. Catherine Lemos, the chairperson and CEO of the CSB.
So welcome and thank you to everyone that has joined our quarterly business meeting. These meetings are a great opportunity to provide an update on CSB activities and progress. Allow me to first summarize the mission of the CSB. We are an independent, non-regulatory federal agency with a mandate to investigate accidental chemical releases at fixed facilities with significant impact to the safety of on-site workers, community members, and our environment. The investigations examine and evaluate a wide range of aspects to include equipment and system design, regulations, industry standards and guidance, training, operations and procedures, and human and organizational factors. With the facts, we conduct analysis to determine the probable cause and contributing factors so that we can better understand not just what happened, but why. We issue safety recommendations for the purpose of preventing the likelihood and consequence of similar incidents in the future. So today I'm joined virtually by Bruce Walker, our senior advisor, David Lacerte, our executive counsel, senior advisor and acting managing director, Stephen Kleist, our executive director of investigations and recommendations, and Chuck Barbie, our director of recommendations. Now allow me to walk through an overview of today's agenda. I'll start by reviewing some of our recent successes and upcoming plans. We will then hear from Acting Managing Director Lacerte, who will provide some critical administrative updates on the agency. Executive Director Kleist will announce in detail our mission performance for fiscal year 21, as presented in our recently published impact report, and he'll also introduce our plan for completing up to 11 investigations in fiscal year 22. Director Barbie will highlight several key recommendations we have recently closed of an especially impactful nature, as they're both on the top of our advocacy list. So I'll start by reviewing the difference between business meetings and board meetings, because they've been called different things in the past. And I touched on this last meeting, but I'm going to go over it one more time. So the purpose of today's business meeting is to provide stakeholders and the general public with insight and transparency into the business of the CSB in meeting our mission. All meetings where a quorum of board members convenes for official business will be held according to the Sunshine Act and accessible to the public moving forward. We are referring to the quarterly meetings required by law as business meetings. And as mentioned in our previous business meeting in July, meetings where the board convenes to review and vote on the completion of an investigation will be referred to as board meetings. Both types of meetings are accessible to the public, currently in a virtual medium, and in the future also in person. So you can find them on our website even after, if you miss this meeting or another board meeting. Transparency is our priority. We continue to request comments from stakeholders and the general public at our agency email at public.csb.gov. So this is our third virtual quarterly business meeting, and the CFR outlines the content and the agenda in advance. Some of these items include the status of our investigations and recent notations processed. Now, the information is already posted on our website under Open Government and Investigations. So during business meetings previously, we have been referring you to this information on our website. And it actually includes far more information than we can possibly cover during a business meeting of this nature. To me, this is great news. It indicates our strong upward performance. The fact that I can't go review each of the 16 recommendations advanced just in the last week speaks to the fact that we're making a lot of progress. And an example, Director Barbie will only highlight 2 of the recommendations we recently closed successfully. And I'd like to define successfully. Successfully refers to recommendations that are closed with actions that are acceptable and either meet the intent of our recommendation or exceed the intent. So we advanced a total of 16 this week, which will be posted shortly on our website if they haven't been already. The 2 highlighted today involve high priority critical drivers for the CSB, one to OSHA in the area of reactives, and another in the area of local emergency response planning, also one of our critical drivers. To provide even better transparency, we will be publishing our plan for completing the current backlog of investigations. So I know this is a topic of great importance to many, many stakeholders, and I'm excited that we can now publish this, and we've done this by quarterly expectations. We'll talk about this later with Director Kleist. So for business meetings, we typically start with general business topics. It's important that you hear from our managing director and understand the significant progress we're making on a number of fronts to reclaim the administrative stability which is needed to function effectively as an agency. And just to reiterate what support functions are, we're talking about IT, HR, communications, and legal. There are many other things that need to make this agency happen. We've been using the business meetings as an opportunity to highlight safety recommendation status changes voted on the notation process, not all of them, but the most critical ones. And sometimes we include the investigators also to introduce the nature of the event. So we need to communicate the important role that recommendations play in our safety life cycle, because without identifying the gaps and making recommendations and advocating for the safety change, the impact of the Chemical Safety Board cannot reach its full potential. So for FY22, in addition to the 4 quarterly business meetings, we conducted 2 board meetings to complete 3 investigations. And Executive Director Kleist is going to provide those details. On that topic, our FY21 impact report, I'd like to highlight the incredible effort of our entire agency in FY21. We really worked hard and all the staff worked diligently to make progress. And the impact reviews our progress in terms of completed reports, recommendations advanced and closed, and new deployments. So Executive Director Kleist will provide the details of these successes listed in the impact report, which was posted last week on the CSB website. On September 29th, the House Committee on Energy and Commerce held a hearing to express their bipartisan support for the CSB and our mission, to learn more about our strategy moving forward, and to better understand where Congress can provide assistance. We continue to engage with the committee on follow-up questions, and we have a link on our website also for all the information that has been provided, the transcript, the video, and additional information as it is released by the committee. So upcoming board meetings are in queue for board member review and vote, and we have advanced an aggressive schedule. Thank you, Mr. Lissert, and thank you, Executive Director Kleist, which includes new safety videos. The agency is also looking forward to onboarding new board members. I will repeat this as many times as possible. We are appreciative to President Biden for nominating new members, and we thank the Senate for their duty and the consideration of those members for confirmation. Additional perspectives, backgrounds, and specialties will serve to strengthen our agency, and I look forward to working with them as soon as they can join us. With that, I will now turn the meeting over to Acting Managing Director Lissert. Mr. Lissert, please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Lemos. As the chairman stated, I am David Lissert, and I serve as Senior Advisor and Executive Counsel, and I'm continuing to fill in as Acting Managing Director. I'd first like to note that we are wrapping up our current round of hirings for chemical incident investigators, and we will begin another round of investigative hiring soon thereafter. All postings will be on USA Jobs. We encourage stakeholders to share and circulate our recruiting efforts so that we can fill our positions with a broad and diverse cross-section of investigative staff. We will also be hiring for multiple recommendation specialists in the coming months. These professionals are key to moving recommendations forward toward closure and advancing chemical safety. We have also recently added key support in the areas of contractual review and human resources. We will continue to add support professionals to our team in conjunction with our mission vacancies. We are now in the first quarter of FY22. The agency is currently operating under the federal continuing resolution as authorized by Congress. While this is sufficient to meet our mission, we're hopeful that a FY22 budget will be advanced by Congress before the current CR expires in December. We have also recently submitted our FY23 budget request, which contains a modest increase in funds as we ramp up staffing, and hopefully we'll be onboarding new board members. If our budget requests are advanced by appropriators, this will allow the agency to reach an all-time high for mission staff by mid-FY23. As the chairman has stated, we're grateful for the bipartisan support we receive from our partners in Congress. Our finance operations have recently completed a fiscal audit, and I would like to commend all fiscal staff on a clean audit report. This is rare in government, and this is especially rare at small agencies who lack the luxury of specialization. We're continuing to improve in our audits. We have a long ways to go in improving policies, procedures, and benchmarks, but I'm confident that we're on the right track forward. One question we received from our oversight hearing that I'd like to address here in our quarterly business meeting is the Biden administration's executive order on scientific integrity. The CSB has always been a leader in scientific integrity, and this excellence should be expected moving forward. We're committed to our products and our findings being rooted in applicable science, and the agency under Chairman Lemos will always maintain this steadfast commitment. We did receive one comment in our last business meeting that I would like to mention. Board Order 47, dealing with the naming of decedents and reports, was indeed misplaced on the agency website for quite some time. The problem was corrected, and there was no actual change in policy. However, I do believe the policy is somewhat unduly vague, and we plan to clean up the language moving forward. You have seen Board Order 47 implemented in our most recent investigation reports, and I thank the commenter for bringing the matter to our attention. Finally, you could expect 2 new safety videos to be released before the end of the calendar year, outlining the investigative reports, findings, and recommendations from our recently closed investigations, AB Specialty Silicones, and Evergreen. As we complete more investigations in the future, they will often be accompanied by a video, which drive the message home in a graphical and easy to understand fashion. As you can see, we're making strides here at the agency and with our mission. We know this impacts stakeholders across government, industry, and the workforce, and our workforces, with a number of non-governmental organizations. We're happy to enjoy bipartisan support, but we absolutely must increase output. As we do so, the agency looks forward to continuing our dialogue on how to achieve our mutually beneficial outcomes with all stakeholders and partners. As always, We look forward to providing the public with these updates, and comments are welcome at public@csb.gov, which we will attempt to address at each public meeting. I can also be reached personally at david.lacerte@csb.gov if anyone would like to discuss a matter with me personally. I thank Dr. Lemos for the opportunity to serve, and I thank all of our CSB staff again for their hard work and dedication to our agency and our mission. I'll now hand the meeting over to Executive Director of Investigations and Recommendations, Mr. Kleist.
Thank you, Mr. Lacerte. As the chairman mentioned, our fiscal 21 impact report is posted on the website. The CSB issued 20 new safety recommendations in fiscal year 2021 in comparison to 0 in fiscal year 2020. A major focus of the CSB in fiscal 2021 has been advancing and closing previously issued recommendations, as recommendations are the CSB's key tool for creating positive safety change. In fiscal year 2021, the CSB's board voted on 47 status changes. 41 of those were closed, 28 of which were closed successfully. And it's important to note, successfully is defined as one of the 3 categories. Either a recommendation would be afforded a classification of acceptable alternative action in that it meets the intent of the original recommendation language, or the recommendation is acceptable and exceeds our intent. The fiscal 2021 impact report also includes information on the 5 deployments, as well as a summary of the many outreach and advocacy events undertaken by the board. In fiscal year 2021, the CSB made a commitment to increase transparency. The CSB has demonstrated this through initiating live virtual board meetings following completion of investigations. This provides the public with insight into the staff's investigative process, the facts and analysis, conclusions, and recommendations. Further, the board's deliberation occurs in real time. In fiscal year 2021, utilizing this new transparency process, the agency closed 3 investigations: the Aghorn investigation, AB Specialty Silicones investigation, and the Evergreen Packaging investigation. Our performance in fiscal year 2021 as compared to fiscal year 2020 is remarkable. I encourage you to download these reports and review our accomplishments. The fiscal year 2022 plan to complete the open investigations is as follows. We have set an aggressive schedule to close our open investigations, and I'd like to share some of those details with you. The 4 investigations likely to be closed in the immediate term would be the Sunoco Logistics Nederland, Texas incident, Didion Milling incident in Cambria, Wisconsin, Biolab Conyers investigation, and finally the Loyline Box Company investigation, which took place, incident occurred in St. Louis, Missouri. The CSB plans to consider 9 investigations for completion in fiscal 2022 to include the Husky Energy Refinery incident, Karari Eval incident, Intercontinental Terminals Company incident, Philadelphia Energy Solutions incident, the Wedland 1H well incident, the Biolab Lake Charles incident, the TPC Group incident, the Chemco incident, and finally the Watson Manufacturing and Grinding incident. The additional 5 investigations are scheduled for completion and consideration in fiscal year 2023, with all the investigations having now been assigned to staff. Those include the Wacker Polysilicon North America investigation, the Optimabel LLC investigation, the Foundation Food Group investigation, the Yunkin Majestic investigation, and the Lyondell Bazell investigation. Chairman, this concludes the staff's presentation of the investigative plan, and I'd like to turn it back to you.
Chairman, I'd like to remind you to unmute yourself.
My apologies. I was told to mute myself at all times. So, Executive Director Kleist, I want to thank you and your entire staff of investigators and recommendation staff, which includes the mission product team, for your diligent efforts this past year. And since I joined the agency, it's been a pleasure. And I know we've really pushed the envelope. So I'd like to add a few comments with regards to our schedule, which you just mentioned. And we also provided this to the Energy and Commerce Committee. So it will be posted shortly on their website as well as on our website. All current investigations would be on track to complete within a 2-year time frame. So all of the open investigations. The plan provides anticipated quarterly completion. So some of them are in 1 quarter and some of them are in 1 quarter versus the next, depending. The plan is based on our assessment as of today and assumes flexibility in the time frame for completing investigations, as dynamic reassessments are required based on a number of external and internal factors. For example, the order of completion may change based on factors outside of our control. There's an unsafe structure and we can't gain access, right? There's site contamination, or we might promote one earlier if it is a high priority incident that is ready for release and warrants an accelerated placement in the queue. So, Steve, I know that we all worked on this together and it is a dynamic reassessment. So, but we are doing our best to place the schedule and our plan on the web and for public viewing, and we will continue to update that regularly. Back to Steve.
Thank you, Chairman. At this point, I'd like to introduce Chuck Barbie, the Director of Recommendations, and Mr. Barbie is going to highlight 2 recommendation status changes that were made and approved by the board. One focusing on the actions resulting from the CSB's reactive hazard management study, and the second that involves the investigation of the Enterprise gas plant facility in Pascagoula. So Mr. Barbie, if you would proceed, please.
Thank you, Executive Director Kleist. As previously stated, for this meeting, we will be highlighting 2 recommendations that were issued from a CSB hazard study and a CSB investigation. First, from the Improving Reactive Hazard Management hazard study published in 2002, we'll highlight OSHA's implementation of our recommendation to them regarding the implementation of a data collection program to collect reactive hazard incident data. Then, from the Enterprise Pascagoula gas plant explosion and fire investigation published in 2019, we will highlight the Jackson County Local Emergency Planning Committee implementation of our recommendation to them to develop a community notification system. So without further hesitation, let's begin with the Improving Reactive Hazard Management hazard study, sometimes referred to as the reactive study. So first, here's an incident summary that led to it. After a number of high consequence incidents resulting from runaway chemical reactions, the U.S. Chemical Safety and Hazard Investigation Board undertook a comprehensive hazard study of reactive chemical hazard management in the United States. This includes the April 21, 1995 explosion and fire at the Knapp Technologies specialty chemical plant in Lodi, New Jersey, which resulted in 5 worker fatalities, and the April 8, 1998 explosion and fire at the Morton International Dye manufacturing plant in Patterson, New Jersey, which injured 9. In total, the CSB identified 167 serious reactive incidents in the United States between 1980 and 2001. 48 of these incidents resulted in 108 fatalities. In addition, more than half of these incidents involved chemicals not covered by existing Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, or Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, standards. While the bulk of the incidents were in the chemical manufacturing industry, 30% occurred at industrial facilities that use or consume chemicals in bulk quantities. As a part of its hazard study, the CSB examined applicable regulations issued by OSHA pertaining to reactive hazards. The CSB concluded that OSHA's Process Safety Management Standard, 29 CFR 1910.119, applies only to single component highly reactive chemicals, and that 50% of the reactive incidents reviewed in the chemical hazard or the CSB hazard study were not covered under the PSM standard. The CSB also determined that existing sources of incident data, including at OSHA, were not adequate to identify the number of severity and causes of reactive incidents or to analyze incident frequency trends. Additionally, incident data collected by OSHA and the EPA provide no functional capability to track reactive incidents, to analyze incident trends, and develop preventive actions at a national level. Consequently, the board issued 2 recommendations to OSHA to address these issues. The second recommendation, CSB recommendation number 2001-01-HXX-R2, asked OSHA to implement a program to define and record information on reactive incidents that OSHA investigates or requires to be investigated under OSHA regulations. Now, the number of recommendations that we issued in this hazard study was 24. And after closing the recommendation that we're talking about, only 2 will remain open. The number of recommendations issued to OSHA in this particular hazard study were 2, one of which we're talking about now. The highlighted recommendation, which is 2001-01-HXX-R2, reads, implement a program to define and record information on reactive incidents that OSHA investigates or requires to be investigated under OSHA regulations. Structure the collected information so that it can be used to measure progress in the prevention of reactive incidents that give rise to catastrophic releases. Now, here's what OSHA did to close this recommendation. So there have been numerous discussions between the CSB and OSHA since this recommendation was issued. Over the years, our 2 agencies continued to explore various alternatives to meet the intent of the recommendation. Then in December of 2013, OSHA published a request for information, or RFI, indicating that it was considering the possibility of regulatory change to its PSM standard that might incorporate reactive hazards. As a result of OSHA's RFI, OSHA defined and has been collecting and reviewing information regarding process safety incidents, including information not currently captured by OSHA, to include all potential reactive hazard incidents. The data includes information from federal partners, such as the CSB and EPA, as well as open source information that requires additional follow-up verification and validation. The data also includes OSHA data from incidents as well as inspections. OSHA uses this data as they continue to evaluate updates to the PSM standard, which includes the evaluation of how best to address reactive hazards. As with any database, based upon amount, frequency, and severity information, it can also be used to measure progress in the prevention of reactive incidents that give rise to catastrophic releases. The collected information is intended to provide specific numbers in support of rulemaking efforts in all aspects of the PSM standard and to include reactive hazards. The data collection program addressed all aspects of the CSB's recommendation. And as a result, on October 26th of 2021, the board voted to change the status of this recommendation to closed acceptable action.
So thank you, Director Barbie. This was a recommendation closure, which I feel is extremely important for a number of reasons, but I'd like you to explain why you thought it was important, because this is the decision of the recommendations team to highlight.
I'm glad you asked that question, Chairman Lemos. There are several reasons for highlighting this recommendation. First and foremost, This recommendation is directly linked to our critical drivers list, or CDL. The specific CDL item is process safety management for the 21st century. As this recommendation is linked to the CDL, it is considered to be the highest priority to the CSB, and it is being acceptably closed, which is a solid victory for safety. Secondly, OSHA is one of the most important stakeholders that we work with to drive critical safety change. Their contributions to safety in the workplace, in the chemical industry, and for the American workers cannot be overstated. And thirdly, recommendations that are issued to federal agencies tend to take much longer to close and require a tremendous amount of communication and coordination to ensure acceptable implementation. This positive outcome for one of our oldest open recommendations is the result of those long-term actions and dedication, and we wanted to highlight those efforts.
Director Barbie, I can't thank you enough for the efforts that you and your team put into this recommendation. I know it's 20 years and it's one of the oldest, but having been involved in rulemaking in the past, I do understand how arduous it can be, especially arduous and meaningful when you engage the stakeholders. So my question, the next question is, now that this is closed, you said there were 24 recommendations issued in the 2002 report for reactives, and reactives is an important topic for us. So how many are still open of those 24?
There are 2 remaining open recommendations that were issued from the reactive study, both of which are for regulatory change. And I thank you, Chairman Lemos, for the opportunity to advocate for their implementation. One was issued to OSHA and the other to EPA. And currently, both have the status of open, unacceptable response or no response received. The first was to OSHA. It is recommendation 2001-01-H-XX-R1 and is summarized as follows. Amend the Process Safety Management Standard, PSM, 29 CFR 1910.119 to achieve more comprehensive control of reactive hazards that could have catastrophic consequences. And there are 3 bullets underneath that to help further explain what we would like. One is broaden the application to cover reactive hazards resulting from process-specific conditions and combinations of chemicals. The second is to require that multiple sources of information be sufficiently consulted to understand and control potential reactive hazards. And the third is to augment the process hazard analysis element of PSM to explicitly require an evaluation of reactive hazards. The second recommendation that we're talking about remaining was to EPA, and it is CSB recommendation 2001-01-H-XX-R3, and is summarized as follows. Revise the accidental release prevention requirements of 40 CFR 68, which involve the PSM elements within the risk management plan regulations, to explicitly cover catastrophic reactive hazards that have the potential to seriously impact the public. And while they're doing that, they should take into account the recommendations of this report that were issued to OSHA on reactive hazard coverage. The CSB has been actively engaged with both OSHA and the EPA for implementation of these recommendations since they were issued in 2002. We have reiterated these recommendations multiple times as they have been relevant in other CSB investigations. Most recently, we had the opportunity to discuss the CSB recommendation 2001-1-H-XX-R3 issued to the EPA during their RMP rulemaking listening sessions that they held during the summer of this year. And we look forward to that same opportunity when OSHA has their upcoming listening sessions regarding the PSM standard. The next recommendation. Yes, ma'am.
Just sorry, really quickly, just to reiterate, there were listening sessions, and because this was discussed in the oversight hearing from Energy and Commerce, we engaged in those, your team engaged in those listening sessions. We provided a written letter, which should be posted on our website with regards to our position of the open RMP related recommendations, as well as we're anticipating listening sessions and an opportunity to voice our opinion for OSHA. So what you're saying is we've been engaged. You've been doing this for many years. You have a very capable team to do this. And this is not something that we have put off on the side. We have been actively engaged in this at a national and a state level.
That's true, Chairman. We have. We work very well with our counterparts over at OSHA, and we're trying to drive these efforts forward.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next recommendation comes from the Enterprise Pascagoula gas plant explosion and fire investigation. And here's a summary of the incident. On June 27, 2016, a major loss of containment resulted in the release of methane, ethane, propane, and several other hydrocarbons at the Enterprise Products Pascagoula gas plant in Pascagoula, Mississippi. The hydrocarbons ignited, initiating a series of fires and explosions, which ultimately shut down the site for almost 6 months. 2 workers were on the night shift when the incident occurred and were uninjured. In addition to other issues, the U.S. Chemical Safety and Hazard Investigation Board's report discusses issues related to emergency response following the incident. Although no off-site property damage was reported, many nearby residents chose to evacuate. After the incident, members of the local community expressed concern to the CSB that since the reverse 911 system was not used, some residents did not know how to react. Additionally, the CSB found that though there were emergency communication methods in place, there was no guidance related to the expectations of their use. Given this information, the CSB made a recommendation to the Jackson County Local Emergency Planning Committee, or LEPC. Now, the number of recommendations issued from this investigation was 5, and three of which will remain open following the closure of this one. The number of recommendations that were issued to this recipient, which is the Jackson County LEPC, is 1. And like I say, we closed it successfully. So here is the highlighted recommendation, which is 2016-2-I-MS-R5, which reads, work with members, which are industry, emergency response, and community, to explicitly define the communication methods for community notification and incident updates, such as social media, local news outlets, passive phone systems, etc., as well as their expectations for their use, so that the members of the public can efficiently and effectively obtain current safety information. Publish these defined community notification methods and expectations for their use on the most appropriate mediums available, such as the Jackson County Emergency Management website, the Jackson County LEPC website, and the social media outlets Jackson County utilizes to disseminate safety information to the community. Now, here's what the Jackson County LEPC did to close this recommendation. The Jackson County Office of Emergency Services worked with the LEPC to aggressively implement the CSB recommendation. They established a website that is accessible to the public where any member of the community can go to view all LEPC information. The website provides information on the community alert system, which is called Civic Ready, and gives you the ability to sign up. There are members of the community, any member of the community can select from the different categories of emergency information they would like to receive via text, email, or voice message. Additionally, there are social media options as well. Each information group has guidance on the information provided. Now, specifically, Jackson County OES took the following actions, and these are not all inclusive. They contracted with a new mass notification company called Civic Ready to implement all available features offered by Civic Ready mass notifications. They provided several individual groups that citizens can choose from to be alerted to include hazardous material releases and shelter-in-place notifications. They added additional features that also include evacuation notices. They implemented the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA's, integrated public alert and warning system, and their wireless alert, or the wireless emergency alert system. They worked with county public information offices to include the Jackson County Facebook page into the system as another alert group. So the new community community notification system met all requirements of the CSB recommendation. As a result, on October 26th, 2021, the board voted to change the status of this recommendation to closed acceptable action.
I'm unmuting and got it. So can everybody hear me and see me?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. So of course, first question, thank you for that. I was really pleased visiting those websites and seeing what the LEPC had provided to LEPC, as you say it, to the community. I feel like it really took our recommendation and took it seriously and provided information to people, as you mentioned. So the question is, the recommendation was issued to the Jackson County Local Emergency Planning Committee, which is the LEPC. So why was the majority of your communication with the Jackson County Office of Emergency Services? Can you help me understand that, or our participants?
Gladly, Chairman Lemos. LEPCs have a broad membership to ensure that the right groups of people can come together and address local emergency situations. Good LEPCs always include the industry, emergency responders, and the community. This group exists to develop and update plans to include the sharing of information that the community would like to receive during an emergency, which is the primary reason for their inclusion. Local offices of emergency services provide government funding, input, and structure in support of the implementation of emergency plans. And as such, once the desires of the Jackson County LEPC were made clear, it was up to the Jackson County Office of Emergency Services to take the action on those desires, which they ultimately and very effectively did.
Technical delay here, but here I am. And that explains it, and thank you so much. I appreciate it. I learned a lot about the reverse 9/11, which is super important. And I believe our recommendations were spot on. So can you tell me more about the significance of this particular recommendation? I know that across a number of investigations over the past 18 months since I've been here, I would say West is one of them. I've gotten a lot of questions about LEPCs and the process of dissemination of information and the process of informing the community and emergency responders of the risks that are present.
Yes, Chairman, this recommendation is very significant, again, for multiple reasons. And again, first and foremost, this recommendation is directly linked to our critical drivers list, or CDL. The specific CDL item is emergency planning and response, or preparedness. As this recommendation is linked to the CDL, it's considered to be the highest priority of the CSB. And, again, it's being closed acceptably. This is another great victory for safety. Secondly, the Jackson County LEPC very adequately addressed a local issue that the community had with receiving information when an emergency occurred. Lastly, and more broad sweeping, is that it provides an exceptional example for other communities, counties, etc., to follow or even improve upon in the arena of sharing emergency situation information. The Jackson County Office of Emergency Services did an outstanding job in implementing this recommendation, and we hope that others will follow their exceptional example. So unless you have additional questions, Chairman, I thank you for the opportunity to highlight these extremely impactful safety recommendations, and I will hand the meeting back to you.
Director Barbie, I want to thank you for that. And I want to additionally highlight that the local community planning and LEPCs are traditionally underfunded. So this was exceptional in that case. I can't say that other agencies are not underfunded, but certainly local areas are, and this was exceptional. And I'm glad that we highlighted this and that you selected this. Thank you so much for you and your team.
Thank you, Chairman Lemos.
Okay, so I believe that we're going to hand this back to Director Lasser.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kleist and Mr. Barbie. And thank you for everyone as Mr. Barbie very diplomatically handled the dog doorbell situation. I know that as we work from a maximum telework posture, these are issues we've all had to deal with over the past more than a year. And thank you. Although I thought you were a big dog kind of guy, Chuck, I thought you would have a larger dog back there. I'd again like to recognize and thank all the staff in advancement of these key safety recommendations. I'd like to specifically thank Amanda Johnson as she departs our agency. I know she's devoted a lot of her time and career to our agency, and she's taken another opportunity elsewhere. And Mark Kazniak, I think, has another quarter with us, so we'll have to defer his thanks until the next quarterly business meeting, until he retires. The work of the recommendation staff often goes overlooked by those unfamiliar with our agency, and I'd like to further point out their efforts in driving our mission. And Dr. Lemos, I believe this concludes the public meeting, and I invite you to issue any closing remarks in which you may have.
Thank you. I want to just add on to your comment about Amanda Johnson and her contributions to this agency. And I believe we can't understate her contributions in many different aspects as an investigator and a recommendation specialist, because a lot of times they merge together as a mission product team. So thank you for your attendance at the public meeting, everybody who was able to join us, and for your attention and support. I also want to thank my senior advisors who work tirelessly. Really, they do. They work tirelessly, and our dedicated agency staff for their contributions here today. All of us share a strong interest in preventing chemical accidents in the future. Once again, though we must remain true to our mission in conducting and issuing independent and objective analysis and recommendations, it is important to consider the expertise, knowledge, and priorities of our stakeholder community. Please look out for our upcoming announcement of board meetings to close out investigations or to complete them, and to our next quarterly public meeting. Thank you. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.